Good evening, BookTube. This is Felicity, and I'm speaking to you from my library. The last time I was going to talk a little bit about what I'm reading, I believe I interrupted myself with a really interesting and really fairly daunting haul from my favorite local antiquarian book dealer. Which I'm not going to be repeating that for a little while because that was it was exciting in more ways than one. Anyway, there you go. But I am this time going to talk about what I'm reading, and I have decided that this is the title of this particular essay, and probably future ones, are my personal theme, which is all the books all the time. And yeah, I've got stacks of books elsewhere that have the bookmarks, the Forest of Bookmarks, but I do usually have some books that sort of rise to the top of the pile, and those are the books that I'm currently reading, and every day I read sometimes more, sometimes less from the books and dip into other ones as I go. Now, 2021, that was last year, I decided that I was going to be more disciplined, and I set up a database. It's called a notebook, where I jotted down, first of all, I jotted down 100 books that I thought I would like to try to read in 2021. And it kind of looks something like this. Yeah, it's a notebook, and I wrote everything in there, and I numbered them all, and I named them and their author, and then and the number of pages that were in it, and then I marked off when I finished it in the month that I finished it. So, for example, let's see, a couple of items on the list. Oh yes, there was The Proper Study of Mankind by Isaiah Berlin, 700 pages, and I finished that in January. January in 2021 was a very good reading month because I decided this is going to be a new thing. I'm going to stop the Forest of Bookmarks in its tracks, and I'm going to start finishing the books I start. Okay, great. Well, so that was really noble and ambitious, and then each month, if I started a new book, which of course I did because I'm me, but then I would have a list. So that says 3. I started it in March, and I've had it cross through it. I finished it in, but I forgot to cross through it. I finished it, and the month in which I finished it. So, say for example, February. There's February, and in February, I started a bunch of books, and I left the blank the spot where I finish it, and there you go. So at the end of the year, I had actually finished quite a few books, and I decided, okay, that was kind of an interesting thing to do, and I made a little list, and so yeah, Felicity likes lists, and then I made a list, and I added everything up, so each quarter, each month, I was listing, okay, this many books, this many pages per day on average, la-di-da. So that was all very educational, but you know what? That was kind of work. And I don't read for a living. I am a manager of a violin shop for a living, and reading is my great pleasure, joy, and relaxation. So I decided in 2022 I was going to go back to my old ways, and so there you go. Forest of Bookmarks and all the books all the time. So here are a few of them. Here's an old favorite. This is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is actually featured in a number of different videos and pictures and Instagram and so forth, because this is one of the treasures of my library, and it's a book that I acquired. It is amongst the very first books that I personally acquired as a young person. I did not buy it. I was at the house of this wonderful lady who was retiring from around the corner from my parents, and picked up this and Plutarch's Lives, and apparently also Jane Eyre. I had forgotten about that. And this one has turned into a book that I read over and over again. Didn't know I was going to at the time, but I love Pride and Prejudice. There's other ones, as I've mentioned these are a few of my favorite things. Persuasion is one that tends to be more of my comfort bookshelf, but Pride and Prejudice is the one which, when I go back and reread it again, the parts that I read, if I read it in part, or if I'm going to go through all the way through, which I am this time, I'm reading it a little bit more slowly and kind of picking up a few things that I didn't pick up before. And that's another thing about not having a list and a checklist and the boxes and the lists and the enumerations, is that I am reading a bit more slowly this year, which is really not a bad thing, because it's all very well to say, hey, I turned over 130 pages today, but what on earth were in those pages? There you go. And of course, Pride and Prejudice begins with, in my opinion, is one of the great opening sentences of all English literature. There's a few other ones, but there you go. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Yeah, I know, I've read that before. It's brilliant. Anyway, so this is my beautiful Pride and Prejudice. It has its own little ribbon and so forth in it, and I am slowly reading it through with all of the other books which I am reading all the time. So that's book one. That's a good book to start with. So the second one, I have 3 books that I'm actually reading right now, which I call my bicycle books. I have a stationary bicycle, which for my health and various other things, I'm sure it's very good for me. That I am sitting on my stationary bicycle and pedaling, and what I do when I'm pedaling is I listen to music on my headphones and I read my books. I have 3. I'm reading the latest volume in a just delightful set. I mentioned this again in what I think a previous what I'm reading now. So this volume is nearly finished, and this is the set of 10 books, the Markham collection of poetry, American and British poets from the beginning-ish to about 1930 when this particular set was published. And I think that in this one, so this is Britain. I'm kind of making good headway here. This is volume 6, 1515 to 1882, British poets, and I have reached Edward Fitzgerald, who wrote the Omar Khayyam, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. So that's great. But I'm going to take this opportunity to read from one of the earlier ones, one of the poems that I just howled and guffawed over. It was one of those tongue-in-cheek, absolutely deadpan, really I'm sure it was meant to be funny because it was kind of like that. And I'm actually going to read it because it's kind of short. It's by Francis Bret Harte, and it's called The Society upon the Stanislaus. I reside at Table Mountain, and my name is Truthful James. I am not up to small deceit, nor any sinful games, and I'll tell in simple language what I know about the row that broke up our society upon the Stanislaus. But first I would remark that it is not a proper plan for any scientific gent to whale his fellow man, and if a member don't agree with his peculiar whim, to lay for that same member for to put a head on him. Now, nothing could be finer or more beautiful to see than the first 6 months' proceedings of that same society, till Brown of Calaveras brought a lot of fossil bones that he found within a tunnel near the tenement of Jones. Then Brown he read a paper, and he reconstructed there from those same bones, an animal that was extremely rare. And Jones then asked the chair for a suspension of the rules till he could prove that those same bones were one of his lost mules. Then Brown he smiled a bitter smile and said he was at fault. It seemed he had been trespassing on Jones's family vault. He was a most sarcastic man, this quiet Mr. Brown, and on several occasions he had cleaned out the town. Now, I hold it is not decent for a scientific gent to say another is an ass, or at least to all intent, nor should the individual who happens to be meant reply by heaving rocks at him to any great extent. Then Abner Dean of Angels raised a point of order when a chunk of old red sandstone took him in the abdomen, and he smiled a kind of sickly smile and curled up on the floor, and the subsequent proceedings interested him no more. For in less time than I write it, every member did engage in a warfare with the remnants of the Paleozoic age, and the way they heaved those fossils in their anger was a sin, till the skull of an old mammoth caved the head of Thompson in. And this is all I have to say of those improper games, for I live at Table Mountain, and my name is Truthful James, and I've told in simple language what I know about the row that broke up our society upon the Stanislaus. All right. Yeah, okay, that was pretty good. Yeah, deadpan. I can't do it. Improper games. Okay, fine. I'm having fun. I'm really having fun with this series. All right, so back to my all the books all the time list. Um, the second of the three books that is near my bicycle that's being read is Ludwig Wittgenstein's The Blue and Brown books. Now, I acquired this a while ago. One of the reasons I have A, so many books with bookmarks in them, and B, so many books that I'm reading at the same time, and C, so many books unread is because I always buy way more books than I can possibly read in a reasonable amount of time before the next time I buy books. Yeah, I'm sure I'm alone in that. Nobody else does that but me, right? Yeah, and I keep them all, as you can see behind me. There they all are, or at least you said some of them. There's actually many signs to this room, and every single side has a bookcase, and there are other rooms that have bookcases. And yeah, my house is a library, and it is full of books. It's wonderful. Anyway, so Ludwig Wittgenstein, was the big work which we remember him for is the Tractatus, which was written when he was actually fairly young. But he was when he moved to England and was a professor of philosophy. And these two books, but particularly the blue, but I think also the brown, represent the notes for a class that he was teaching or classes that he was teaching, and so are fairly terse and well, very philosophical, but terse and quite readable, and lay out in it without too much embroidery. They lay out his way of thinking and what he believed to be important in philosophy and what he believed was philosophical dead ends. So there you go. This is I've not gotten very far. He's talking about words and the meaning of words and how words work. For example, I will give a few such interpretations and use English words with well-established usage. The definition can then be interpreted to mean this is a pencil, this is round, this is wood, this is one, this is hard, etc. One might object to this argument that all these interpretations presuppose another word language. So it's not easy reading, but it's also not terribly difficult because everything is reasonable and understandable. So there you go. I am starting in on this, and this is one of the bicycle books. All right. The third bicycle book is My Friend Montaigne, my beautiful 4-volume set, 3 volumes of which are the essays themselves, and the 4th volume are the extensive notes and annotations, which in this particular case give the original source of the quotes that he has, most of which are from wonderful ancient classical writers who I have represented in my little library over there, which you can't see anymore because it's not that part of the library I'm looking at. So this particular this is volume 2, and I am nearly finished with it because I'm reading an essay a day, and sometimes a little bit more if they're really short. I have 2 more to go of the most eminent men, and probably a long but fairly interesting one that because I know because I've read it before, which is called Of the Resemblance of Children to Their Fathers. And I recall reading it in the collection, sort of the, not best of, but the selection of Montaigne essays that I've had for years and years, and I've read 2 or 3 times and decided finally, as I mentioned in the previous video, that I needed the whole thing. So I am nearly done with volume 2. Volume 3 will likely be joining my bicycle reading team because I am going to read the entire works of Montaigne this year, slowly, essay by essay. All right, so that is what is on, there's another bookshelf by my stationary bicycle, which I pedal, and that bookshelf is full of books, some of which started off as, oh, these are going to be pretty penguins, and now they've kind of gone back to where they belong with other books, poetry, classics, sagas, whatever, plays, novels, and then the top shelves were going to be new books that I hadn't read yet, and they've kind of got interspersed, and yes, whatever. So, all right, so then I've got another class of books that actually, Pride and Prejudice was one of the books by my bedside, because, of course, and I'm the only one that does this naturally, is I've got a stack of books that I'm reading bedside the bed. Nobody else, right? All right, so I'm currently also in the All the Books All the Time series, reading Graham Greene's The Power and the Glory. Have never read it before. It's been in my library for a while, but not a great while, because I started every time I went to the store and I saw a Graham Greene paperback and a reasonably nice edition and in reasonably nice shape, I would buy it. So I've got quite a lot of Graham Greene and very little of it read. I started last year. One of my TBR was The Third Man, which I read. It was great. Short. So I'm reading more. This is interesting. This is a very interesting look. This is at the state of the church in Mexico during the purges. This does actually draw on his journalistic experience while he was there. But of course, this is genuine novel. This is not a journalism effort. This is a novel. And I think it's supposed to be one of his really famous ones. I don't know, it's pretty good, and I'm enjoying reading it. But again, it's by the bedside, and it's not always the one I first pick up, because there are others. The third one that's currently living beside my bed is, a reread of Umberto Eco's The Mysterious Flame of Queen Loana, or Ioana. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it sure looks like Loana to me, so that's how I'm saying it. I read it a long time ago. It was published in 2004. This is not William Weaver. This is translated from the Italian by Geoffrey Brock, so this is a fairly late one. Not the very latest one, because I've got everything he wrote. This one is actually, it's kind of fun, and it's more than fun. It's Umberto Eco doing what Umberto Eco does best, which is to write a fascinating novel, beautifully written, with scads and scads of quotes. Sometimes, like as in The Name of the Rose, there was a lot of really interesting Latin brought in, and it was a murder mystery. This one, it's been a long time since I read. I'm not going to say how it ends, but the premise is a very well-educated man who has lost his memory through some undisclosed accident or illness. He has lost his memory of his wife, his children. They have to be reintroduced to him again, but he remembers every book he's ever read. He thinks of some idea, and immediately a quote from something pops up, and it's from a book. I think the first time I read this, I have always read all my life, but I think the first time I read it, a lot of those references went over my head, whatever. And this time, I'm getting them all. So it's also got a lot of really great pictures. It's let's go pull them through the end. I'll just grab a couple. So it's incredibly illustrated with cartoons and pictures of old posters and old books. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, so Umberto Eco's Queen Loana is being read at this time. That was my offspring off on the corner there. All right, so back to still made me laugh. Back to my immediate stacks. Yeah, no, like these are the immediate stacks. You should see the non-immediate stacks. And what I'm reading at the table when I am not otherwise engaged in conversation is The Spanish Civil War by Hugh Thomas. Again, I picked this up, I don't know when, a long time ago, probably since I never read it. It was on my shelf with other history books, and I just decided it was time to read it, and it is turning out to be, although quite confusing, seems to be a fairly good look at the ins and outs of politics and economics in Spain before the Civil War. And I haven't quite got to the Civil War yet, but I am definitely moving up there year by year. The book, so Hugh Thomas in this book describes all of the various events that were going on in Spain, and obviously what was going on in Europe at the same time, because he begins in about 1933, 34, and pulls in some political events from previous times, but mostly he's moving forward towards the inevitable. And I have ignored this section of European history for a very long time, and now I'm reading it. bit by bit, over breakfast, and sometimes dinner. There you go. So the Spanish Civil War by Hugh Thomas is on my All the Books All the Time immediate list. All right, so then I've got a set of books that is living over by another chair upstairs. So when I'm finished with the table, I go and sit in my nice, comfortable chair upstairs. I have these books by the side. So the first one is one that I've also shared because this is one that I got at the wonderful hall where I got the book, the Horace in Latin, which is yeah. I may do a little tiny video on that later, but I'm going to do a little Latin first before I do. So this is the Rosenbach, and it is the biography of the famous Rosenbach book collector, bookseller, reader for sure. He was incredibly well read. He wasn't really crazy about the education part of it, but he certainly went to college long enough and to get his degree, got 2 degrees. He ended up getting a higher degree, and he read like a crazy fool the whole time. So he knew everything. He had a phenomenal memory, and it was after that he started to then put together these authors, these books with this is a rare book, this is not so rare a book, this is what's the condition. Anyway, so Rosenbach is extremely well known of the 20th century book collectors and book dealers, and it's a fascinating read. Besides which, I love the Rosenbach collection that he still has of his own personal collection from the before times in the Rosenbach House and Museum in Philadelphia, which I will go back to someday. There you go. So the other book that I'm sort of reading side by side, which is one which I definitely snort over, is I picked this up at Moe's the time before that, and that's The Ill-Tempered Clavichord, and it's hilarious. This is S.J. Perlman, an equal opportunity insulter. He's wonderful. He's really not PC. He's right up my alley. He's hilarious. It is not the same kind of humor as Cold Comfort Farm or Lawrence Durrell's Stiff Upper Lip and Esprit de Corps, but it's very American humor. It's it was example. Oh, White Doctor, what big green eyes you have. They're all like little essays, and I'm sure they appeared in something or other, some book or other. Oh, yeah, that cradles the book. Cloudland Revisited. White Doctor, what big green eyes you have. Halfway through the summer of 1916, I was living on the rim of Narragansett Bay, a fur-bearing adolescent with cheeks as yet unscarred by my first Durham duplex razor, when I read a book that exerted a considerable influence on my bedtime habits. Up till then, I had slept in normal 12-year-old fashion with the lights full on, a blanket muffling my head from succubi and efreets, a chair wedged under the doorknob, and a complex network of strings festooned across the room in a way scientifically designed to entrap any trespasser, corporeal or not. On finishing the romance in question, however, I realized that the protection I had been relying on was woefully inadequate, and that I had merely been crowding my luck. Every night thereafter, before retiring, I spent an extra half-hour barricading the door with a chest of drawers, sprinkling tacks along the windowsills, and strewing crumpled newspapers about the floor to warn me of approaching footsteps. As a minor added precaution, I slept under the bed, a ruse that did not make for refreshing slumber, but at least threw my enemies off the scent. Whether it was constant vigilance or natural stamina, I somehow survived, and indeed received a surprising number of compliments on my appearance when I returned to grammar school that fall. I guess nobody in those parts had ever seen a boy with snow-white hair and a green skin. All right, that's one I'm in. So actually, that's not the one I'm in the middle of. I actually just started Chewy's the Goat, but flicks need hypo. Right, S.J. Perlman. Ill-Tempered Clavichord. I have 2 or 3 of his books, and it's really pretty funny. Kind of have to be there, but it's that sort of like deadpan, but exaggerated prose that that really only American journalists can do. It's great stuff. All right, then I have a few more which are living downstairs in the next to the other chair that I sit in, above the entire stack of another 50 books that are in the All the Books All the Time, but I'm reading them more slowly. There you go. So this one I'm not going to talk too much about because I have actually already mentioned it. Dust in the Lion's Paw by Freya Stark. And it is her memoir of her activity during World War II in not Oman, Yemen, and Egypt, and places farther east. So it's fascinating. Freya Stark is one of my literary heroes. She is wonderful. I like her travel writing very, very much. This is quite a different thing, but I'm very happy to be reading it now. And so this is one of the books that I had introduced in my video on memoirs being read. All right. So here goes, the selected poetry of Lord Byron. It's got a bookmark in it. That bookmark was in there because I am currently reading Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. I have a feeling that it's probably going to end up beside the stationary bicycle at some point because that is what happens. There's some really wonderful things in here. I don't know if I want to read. Oh, yeah. So, come, blue-eyed maid of heaven, but thou, alas, didst never yet one mortal song inspire. Goddess of wisdom, here thy temple was, and is, despite of war and wasting fire. I might have read this, I can't remember. And years that bade thy worship to expire, but worse than steel and flame, and ages slow as the dread scepter and dominion dire of men who never felt the sacred glow that thoughts of thee and thine on polished breasts bestow. So yeah, this is a reminder. This is going to go back upstairs this time and live on the bookcase beside the bicycle. Two more. One I have mentioned that is actually coming close to being done. This is Haruki Murakami's first person singular short stories collected together, and they go very quickly. He has a very spare, very elegant style. What I'm currently reading is wow, that's quite an opening. It's called Carnival, and the opening sentence is, of all the women I've known until now, she was the ugliest. All right, that's probably going to stay downstairs. And the last one is, don't know why, never read it, but there you go. M.R. James, Ghost Stories. What a prolific writer in such an amazing different number of genres. He's kind of forgotten today except for his ghost stories, but the way these are written inspires me to maybe look at some other things. So this is one of 2 volumes published by Penguin. I think this is the complete ghost stories. And I finished, they're weird. They're it's not horror like modern Blood and Guts, more like unease and kind of frisson of terror, but not really outright showing all of the blood and guts all over the place. Just finished Lost Hearts, which was terrifying. Okay, so the one I write is called The Mezzotint. There's a narrator for most of these, and this one has an I in it. Some time ago, I believe I had the pleasure of telling you the story of an adventure which happened to a friend of mine by the name of Dennis Doone during his pursuit of objects of art for the museum at Cambridge. And yes, I did read that. It was great. There was a book involved. It was a manuscript that had a couple of pages which summoned elders from the vasty deep or something. He burned the pages. Right. So that is the current state of my my list of books that I'm sort of more or less reading currently, all at the same time, part of all the books all the time. And I hope you've enjoyed this little romp through my current stack. There was other stacks. I will hopefully do some more. Maybe I'll read some more of them and have some different ones with different bookmarks next time. Anyway, thank you for watching. Bye-bye for now.